For 10 years, my son called me useless. It started small, the way these things always do. A rolled eye here, a sharp sigh there. He was 22 when he landed his first big deal, fresh out of business school with fire in his veins and ice where his heart used to be. I was proud of him, of course. I had raised him alone after his father walked out when he was 6, working double shifts at the hospital laundry, then triple shifts when he wanted new shoes or a better calculator or that summer trip to Europe that all his friends were taking. I never complained. That is what mothers do. We bend so our children do not have to. We break so they can stand. We disappear so they can shine. But somewhere along the way, Derek decided that my bending made me weak, that my breaking made me broken, that my disappearing made me worthless. "You don't understand business, Mother," he would say, pushing his chair back from the dinner table I had set for him, even though he was 30 years old and I was still welcome in his home only because he needed someone to water his plants when he traveled and sign for his packages when he was too busy to be bothered. "You've never built anything. You just washed other people's sheets. You just cleaned other people's floors. You just heated up other people's leftovers. You've spent your whole life serving, and you have nothing to show for it." I did not remind him that those sheets paid for his first suit, the one he wore to his first interview, the one that made him look like he belonged in rooms where people like us were never supposed to sit. I did not remind him that I worked through pneumonia, through a broken wrist, through the winter my mother died and I had to choose between a plane ticket to her funeral and a new coat for my son. I chose the coat. I always chose him. A mother's sacrifices are meant to be invisible, silent, forgotten. I had learned that lesson well. The first time he called me useless, I cried in my car for an hour. The 10th time, I cried for 10 minutes. The 50th time, I did not cry at all. The 100th time, I barely blinked. I simply nodded, finished wiping the counter, and went home to my small apartment with the ticking clocks. I collected clocks, you see, not because I was some quirky old woman with too much time on her hands. I collected them because they reminded me that everything runs out. Every spring unwinds, every battery dies, every gear eventually stops turning. The most powerful man in the world cannot stop the minute hand from moving, and the most ungrateful son cannot undo the years his mother spent breaking her back for him. Time is the only thing we cannot buy, cannot steal, cannot beg our way back into. And time was teaching Derek a lesson he did not even know he was failing. What Derek did not know was that I had been watching him, not as a mother watches a son with love and hope and gentle concern. I had been watching him as an architect watches a building settle, looking for cracks, as a farmer watches the sky, reading the weather, as a chess player watches an opponent who does not even know he is in a game. I saw the cracks. The payroll he mishandled because he was too arrogant to hire a proper accountant. The partners he insulted because he thought his money made him better than them. The offshore accounts he thought no one knew about because he used his childhood birthday as the password. The side deals, the hidden ledgers, the promises he made to dangerous men and then broke because he believed he was untouchable. I knew because I was the one who taught him that numbers mattered. I was the one who sat beside him at the kitchen table every night, showing him how to balance a checkbook, how to calculate interest, how to spot a bad deal from a mile away. I was the one who said, "Details are sacred, Derek. A single missed decimal can cost you everything." He had listened to every lesson, he had memorized every rule. He just never realized who the teacher was. He thought he had taught himself. He thought his success was a miracle of his own making, a flower that had grown from concrete without sun, without soil, without the hands that had planted the seed and watered the ground and pulled every weed while you slept. So I started buying pieces of him. Not openly, Never openly. A mother knows that the deadliest hands are the ones you never see. I used different names, different accounts, different lawyers in different cities. I opened shell companies in countries Derek had never heard of. I befriended his enemies and called myself a widow looking for investment advice. I learned to lie better than I had ever learned to cook, and I had learned to cook pretty well. A share here, a contract there, a debt note tucked inside a folder of otherwise unimportant paperwork. The day he told me I was dead weight at his Christmas party, standing in front of his employees while they pretended not to hear, I bought 5% of his logistics division. The day he introduced me to his business partners as the help, can she get anyone a drink, I acquired the debt of his biggest rival. The day he forgot my birthday entirely, too busy closing a deal to even send a text, I bought the building where his headquarters sat. He was renting from me for 2 full years and never knew it. For 10 years, he called me useless. For 10 years, he pushed me further and further to the edges of his life until I was nothing more than a photo on a shelf, a name on an emergency contact form, a woman who showed up at holidays with homemade pies that he barely touched. For 10 years, I smiled and nodded and went back to my small apartment with the ticking clocks, and every night I sat in my chair and I added another brick to the wall I was building around him. I knew I was dying before the doctors told me. A mother knows these things. We feel the cracks in our own bodies the same way we once felt the kicks of our children in the womb. It was my heart, worn thin from years of work and worry and the slow poison of watching my son become a stranger. The doctors said it was genetics, bad luck, the natural decay of an old machine. But I knew the truth. My heart was not failing because of bad genes. My heart was failing because I had spent 30 years giving every piece of it to someone who would stop believing it had any value. I did not tell Derek. What would be the point? He would have called me dramatic. He would have said I was looking for attention, looking for sympathy, looking for one last chance to make everything about me. He might have even come to the hospital, but only to sign papers, only to tell the doctors to bill his office, only to make sure no one thought he was neglecting his poor old mother. He would have sat beside my bed with his phone in his hand, answering emails while I tried to tell him that I loved him. I knew this because he had done it before. 3 years earlier, when I had been admitted for what they thought was a minor stroke, he had shown up, signed some forms, taken a call from his lawyer, and left within 45 minutes. He did not ask if I was scared. He did not hold my hand. He did not say thank you. So I made other plans. My last day was a Tuesday. I remember because the clocks in my apartment were all wrong that morning, each one showing a different time, and I spent an hour setting them right. There is something peaceful about winding a clock, about feeling the spring tighten under your fingers, about knowing that for just a moment you have some small control over the passage of time. I set them all to the same minute. For the first time in years, they ticked together, in unison, like a heartbeat. Derek was hosting another one of his parties at his penthouse that night, and he had asked me to help with the catering. That is how he phrased it, help with the catering. His mother, the woman who had held his hand when he took his first steps, who had stayed up all night when he had the flu, who had sold her wedding ring to pay for his braces, help with the catering. I said yes. I always said yes. I wore a black dress and tied my gray hair back and took the bus to his building because he was too busy to send a car. I walked through the service entrance because the front door required a key card I did not have. I carried trays of champagne through rooms full of people who would not meet my eyes, who looked through me like I was made of glass, who laughed at jokes I did not hear and made deals I did not understand. Midway through the night, Derek raised his glass and pointed at me from across the room. He had been drinking. His voice was loud, unsteady, cruel in that casual way that drunk people think is honesty. "My mother," he announced, gesturing toward me with his whiskey glass. A few people turned to look. I kept walking, kept clearing glasses, kept my head down. "She's been finding herself for 10 years now, still looking apparently. Useless then, useless now. Can you believe she used to tell me she was the reason I made it? This woman, this caterer, this janitor, she couldn't run a lemonade stand." People laughed. A few looked uncomfortable. One woman, young and pretty and clearly new to Derek's circle, opened her mouth as if to say something, then thought better of it. Derek was beaming, basking in the attention, feeding on the energy of the room like a vampire at a blood drive. I smiled. I kept walking, but I stopped at the service door and pressed a small button hidden in my apron. A dead man switch. I had wired it to my heart monitor 3 months earlier, back when the doctors had first told me that my heart could stop at any time. They had wanted to admit me, to run more tests, to put me on a list for a transplant that I knew would never come. I had refused. I had gone home, and I had soldered wires to a circuit board, and I had hidden it inside the cover of a Bible that Derek had given me one Christmas, still in its plastic wrap, unread. The switch was simple. If my heart stopped, even for a few seconds, a signal would be sent. And when that signal was sent, everything would begin to fall. I went home. I sat in my chair. The clocks ticked around me, all in sync for the first time in years, each one marking the same moment, each one counting down to something I could feel coming in my bones. I thought about Derek at 6 years old, holding my hand in the grocery store, trusting me completely. He had squeezed my fingers so tight that day, afraid of the automatic doors, afraid of the loudspeaker announcements, afraid of the world that seemed so big and so loud and so ready to swallow him whole. I had squeezed back. I had said, "I've got you, baby. Mommy's got you." And he had believed me. I thought about Derek at 12, crying because a bully had stolen his lunch money and pushed him into a mud puddle on the way home from school. He had been so ashamed, so certain that he had done something wrong, that he had deserved it somehow. I had driven to that bully's house that same night. I had knocked on the door and spoken to his mother, a tired woman with tired eyes who had apologized and promised to handle it. The bully never touched Derek again. Derek never knew why. He thought the boy had just lost interest. I thought about Derek at 18, hugging me tight before he left for university, promising to make me proud. His arms had been strong around me, his voice thick with tears he was trying to hide. "I'm going to be somebody, Mom," he had whispered into my hair. "I'm going to make sure you never have to work another day in your life." I had believed him. I had believed every word. I do not know exactly when he changed. Maybe it was the money. Maybe it was the power. Maybe it was the first time someone called him sir instead of kid. Maybe it was the first time he realized that people were afraid of him and he liked it. Maybe it was something I did wrong, some moment I failed to see, some wound I did not heal, some lesson I forgot to teach. A mother carries those questions to her grave. We turn them over and over in our minds like stones in a river, wearing them smooth, wearing them down, wearing ourselves out in the process. My heart stopped at 11:47 p.m. I felt it happen. There is no pain, not really, just a sudden silence, a stopping. The clocks went quiet one by one, their springs unwound, their gears frozen mid-turn. The room went dark, and for 30 seconds, I was gone. 30 seconds. Long enough. The switch triggered. Across the city, lights flickered. Servers began to empty. Every account, every patent, every contract, every secret deal, every hidden ledger, every offshore holding that Derek thought he had locked away behind firewalls and lawyers and layers of plausible deniability, all of it transferred. Transferred to foundations I had set up years ago, named after women nobody remembered. My mother, my grandmother, my aunt who died young, women who had worked and bled and sacrificed and been called useless in their own time. His biometrics were stripped from every building he owned. The doors would not open for him, the elevators would not carry him, the security systems that had once recognized his face, his fingerprint, his voice, now saw only a stranger, a trespasser, an intruder in his own kingdom. His security team received messages telling them they were fired effective immediately, with termination bonuses paid from accounts Derek did not even know existed, accounts I had opened in their names years ago, just in case I needed them to walk away, just in case I needed them to watch him fall. His rivals received anonymous packages containing every dirty secret he had ever tried to bury, the deals he had broken, the partners he had betrayed, the payments he had promised to dangerous men and then forgotten, assuming they would not notice, assuming they would not care, assuming he was too big to touch. He was not too big. He was never too big. He was just a boy who had forgotten that the ground beneath his feet was not his to own. I flatlined for 30 seconds. Then my heart started again. It happens sometimes, the doctors told me later, a spontaneous restart, a miracle they called it, but it was not a miracle. It was an old paramedic trick I had learned 40 years ago, back when I thought I might become a nurse instead of a single mother. You wire a monitor to a small battery pack, and you set it to deliver a shock if the heart stops for more than 15 seconds. Crude, dangerous, but effective enough to buy you a few more hours. Funny how life circles back around. Funny how the things you learn in one life save you in another. When I opened my eyes, I heard the sirens. Not police. I knew those sounds. These were different, lower, meaner, the sound of men who had been waiting for a long time, who had been patient, who had been watching and waiting and sharpening their knives. The other families, the ones Derek had double-crossed, cheated, humiliated, and dismissed, they were coming for him, and for the first time in his life, he had no walls to hide behind. Derek found me an hour later. He burst through my apartment door with a gun in his hand, his expensive suit torn, his face wild with fear and fury. His hair was a mess, his tie was missing. There was blood on his collar, not his own, from someone he had shoved or struck or maybe worse. Behind him stood Kane, his head of security, along with 2 armed men. But even Kane looked different now, uncertain. He had just received the message about his offshore accounts. Empty, every single one. He had received another message, too, from me, sent automatically the moment my heart stopped. A list of everything I knew about him. His debts, his secrets, the woman in the city he was not supposed to love, the child he was not supposed to have. Kane was not there to protect Derek anymore. Kane was there to see what happened next. "What did you do?" Derek screamed. His voice was raw, shredded, like he had been screaming for hours. Maybe he had. "Everything is gone. The company, the accounts, the buildings, my people. Everyone just walked away. Kane won't even look at me. What did you do?" I stayed in my chair. My heart was beating again, but it was weak, irregular, a clock with a broken spring. I did not have much time left. I looked at my son, my beautiful, broken, arrogant, terrified son, and I felt something I had not felt in years. Pity. "I built you," I said quietly. My voice was soft, but it carried. It always carried. "I built you with my own hands, my own back, my own blood. I worked when I was sick. I starved so you could eat. I went without so you could have. And you called me useless. You called me useless for 10 years, Derek. 10 years of your life, and every single day you looked at the woman who gave you everything and you told her she was nothing." He opened his mouth to speak. I held up my hand. He stopped. Some habits are too deep to break. "So, I spent 10 years proving you wrong," I continued. "Every company you own, I own the debt. Every partner you trust, I pay their salary. Every secret you keep, I wrote half of them myself. Every building you walk through, I hold the lease. You are not a king, Derek. You are not an emperor. You are not a self-made man. You are a boy sitting on a throne I built with my own 2 hands, and today I am taking it back." He raised the gun. His hand was shaking so badly I could see the tremor from across the room. Tears were running down his face. He looked like a child having a nightmare, desperate to wake up, desperate for someone to tell him it was not real. "You're lying," he whispered. "You're lying. You're just a cleaning lady. You're just a caterer. You don't know anything about business. You don't know anything about money. You don't know anything about me." I smiled. It was a sad smile, the kind of smile that comes from a place too deep for anger. "That gun hasn't worked since last Christmas," I said. "I replaced the firing pin while you were opening your presents. You were too busy checking your phone to notice. You were too busy telling someone you were too important to spend the holiday with your mother. Do you remember what you said that day? You said, 'Next year, just send a card.'" He pulled the trigger. Click. Nothing. The sound echoed in the small room. The clocks were still silent. The only noise was the distant wail of sirens, growing closer, growing louder. The look on Derek's face was not anger anymore. It was not fear anymore. It was something worse. It was understanding, the slow, terrible, irreversible realization that he had never been alone. He had never been powerful. He had never been anything except a vessel for his mother's silent, patient, invisible love. And he had thrown that love away. He had stomped on it. He had laughed at it. He had called it useless. The gun fell from his hand. It hit the floor with a dull thud. He fell to his knees beside it. His shoulders shook. His whole body shook. Tears dripped from his chin onto the worn carpet, the same carpet he had walked on as a child, the same carpet I had scrubbed 1,000 times to keep clean for him. "Mom," he whispered. His voice broke on the word. "Mom, please, I don't know what to do. I don't know who I am. I don't know anything. Please, please help me." For a long moment, I did not move. I sat in my chair, surrounded by silent clucks, looking at my son on his knees. I thought about all the nights I had held him when he was small, all the fevers I had cooled, all the nightmares I had chased away, all the times I had told him that everything would be okay, that Mommy was here, that he was safe. I stood up. My legs were weak, my chest ached, but I stood. I walked to him. I knelt down on the floor beside him, the same floor where he had learned to crawl, where he had built forts out of blankets, where he had fallen asleep waiting for me to come home from work. I placed my hand on his cheek, just like I used to do when he had nightmares. His skin was wet with tears. His beard scratched my palm. He leaned into my touch like a starving man leaning into a meal. "You wanted to see what happens when I am not holding you up," I said softly. "Now you know. You fall and you keep falling because there is no ground beneath you. There never was. I was the ground. I was the ground, and you walked on me until I broke." He sobbed, a deep, ugly animal sound. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll fix it. I'll fix everything. Just tell me what to do. Just stay. Please, just stay." I kissed his forehead. I tasted salt. "Goodbye, Derek." I stood up. I walked to the window. I opened it. The fire escape was old, rusted, probably unsafe, but I had climbed it 100 times before, back when Derek was young and I would sit on the roof and look at the stars and pretend that everything was going to be all right. "Mom, no! Mom, wait, please! I need you! I need you!" I looked back one last time. My son, my beautiful, broken, arrogant, terrified son, kneeling on the floor of my small apartment, surrounded by silent clocks, reaching for me with hands that had once held mine. "No," I said, "you don't need me. You never did. That was the problem. You thought needing someone was weakness, so you convinced yourself you didn't need anyone. And now, for the first time in your life, you're right." I climbed onto the fire escape. The metal groaned under my weight. Behind me, Derek screamed. Not for help, not for mercy. He screamed for his mother. I did not look back again. They never found my body. The heart condition was real, and the paramedic trick only bought me a few hours. I made it far enough to find a quiet place, a peaceful place, a place where the clocks ticked in unison and no one called anyone useless. I sat down under a tree I had never seen before, in a park I had never visited, in a part of the city Derek had never bothered to explore. I closed my eyes, I listened to the birds, I thought about my son, and I forgave him. Mothers always do, even when we shouldn't, even when we swore we wouldn't. Forgiveness is not something we choose, it is something we are, like breathing, like bleeding, like loving someone who does not deserve it. Derek lost everything that night: the company, the money, the friends, the respect. The rivals I had armed with his secrets bled him dry within a year. His penthouse was repossessed, his cars were seized, his name became a joke in the circles where he had once been feared. He lives in a small apartment now, the kind of place he used to mock, the kind of place he used to drive past and say, "Can you imagine being that poor?" He works a job he used to laugh at, a desk job with a small salary and a smaller office and no one who calls him sir. Sometimes I hear he talks to himself. He talks about his mother. He talks about the clocks. He talks about a woman in a black dress who carried trays of champagne while her son called her useless. He talks about the last time he saw her face and the way she kissed his forehead and the sound of the fire escape groaning under her weight. The foundations I set up with his money now fund 17 orphanages. Each one is named Useless. It was my final joke, my final lesson, my final gift. Every morning, hundreds of children wake up in buildings that bear that word, and every morning they are fed and clothed and taught and loved. They learn to read, they learn to write, they learn that no child is useless, no mother is useless, no person who works and bleeds and sacrifices for another is ever, ever useless. And somewhere, in a small apartment on the other side of the city, a man who used to be a king sits alone in the dark and wonders what happened to his crown. Here is what Derek never understood. A mother is never useless. A mother is the ground beneath your feet, the air in your lungs, the silence that catches you when you fall. You can call her names, you can push her away, you can pretend you built yourself from nothing, that you climbed the mountain alone, that you need no one and nothing and no one needs you. But the day she dies, you find out exactly how much nothing weighs. And it is heavier than you ever imagined, heavier than gold, heavier than money, heavier than every empire ever built by every man who ever forgot where he came from. It is the weight of a hand on your cheek, the weight of a kiss on your forehead, the weight of a woman who loved you when you did not deserve it, who stayed when you begged her to leave, who built a throne for you and then watched you burn it down. That weight never goes away. It sits on your chest every night when you try to sleep. It follows you into every empty room. It whispers your name in the dark, and you turn toward the sound, and there is no one there. Just the ticking of a clock. Just the memory of a mother. Just the unbearable weight of being loved and refusing to love back. Goodbye, Derek. I hope the clocks keep time for you. I hope you remember. I hope you finally understand.